women authors continue to grow, male authors continue to decline. And 40 years later, from 1980 and 2020, women authorship finally surpassed male authorship. And what you see now is women are only earning 58% of bachelor's and 61% of master's degrees. So you can't say that correlation is causation, but you can say that there's a very interesting parallel between the amount of authors of a certain sex and the degrees awarded to them post-secondary, the academic achievements. And so when I'm saying that more books need to be made for men, it's not just for entertainment. It's the fact that this may have a very serious effect on society, that there are less and less men being educated because less and less men are reading.
Everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have an author on the show. That's appropriate because it's an author podcast. And Oswald Black is on the show, and Oswald likes music, so I'm already feeling like I'm in good company right now. Thievery and Grace is the book that we're going to be chatting about today, plus a lot of other stuff. And I'm excited because Oswald is also here in Canada, which makes me happy, which is awesome. And I'm so glad to have Oswald on the podcast. Oswald, welcome to Living the Next Chapter.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. Tell everybody where in Canada you are, Oswald.
Right now, I reside just outside Toronto, Ontario, in the suburbs of Mississauga.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, hey, it's springtime in Canada, so that's nice. I actually went outside with a T-shirt on. I'm like, yay! My neighbors are like, "You guys are weird." But yeah,
it's better than the snow, but it has been raining a significant amount here, so I haven't been able to get outside too much yet, but it's on the way.
Cool. Awesome. Let's jump into the author side of your story. Oswald, tell me, when was the idea to become an author? How did this all start for you?
Okay, well, we were just talking about music, and I used to be very involved in music. I was a very high energy person, and so I got out that energy by joining a band. I was in a punk rock band, so jumping around on stage a lot. My problem with the punk rock thing was I never really had a lot of money, and starting a band, you need to purchase things like amps, maybe a mixer, microphone, and stuff like that. So I couldn't afford those things. My drummer actually had to provide my amp. He provided my bass, pretty much everything. I just basically showed up and did it. So once we kind of lost touch, I didn't really have the ability to do that anymore. So what I did was I started doing hip hop, and this was a time when Eminem started getting really big. And before that, I was never really into hip hop. It was actually kind of socially unacceptable for me to like hip hop, because while I was growing up, we had this thing. It was kind of like the rockers versus the hip hoppers, and we had like a big Filipino population in our school. And they kind of played basketball and listened to hip hop, and we played hockey and listened to rock. And we were all friends. There wasn't any animosity there, but that's just how it was split up. And then when Eminem came along, he kind of bridged that gap where people from my side were allowed to experience that world. And I really enjoyed, because I've always really been into writing as well since I was a kid. I really enjoyed the rhyming factor about putting syllables together and writing verses that way. So I excelled at it, and I was pretty good. And so that's how I spent a lot of my 20s. But as I got older, into my 30s, that massive atomic energy that I had started to dwindle a bit. And I found myself looking for a new outlet for my creativity. And like I said, I've always been into writing. And when I had that energy, I couldn't really sit down and sit at a computer and write too much. I needed to be out, be active. And as this energy that I had started to dwindle a bit, I found myself now able to sit at a computer with my coffee and really enjoy the experience of writing. And not just writing rhymes, but writing prose. And there's a little bit of a difference there because when you're writing prose, there's a system of kind of show versus tell, and you do find that a
Right.
bit in the hip hop, but it's not as prevalent as it is in prose. So I really had to adjust to that new format, which I think I've been doing, and I'm always learning. I'm always a learner, always a student. But I've had to read a lot to see how it's done, read the masters and be a student and learn. But now here I am, and this is my second book. The first book that I wrote, Wedding Bandits, hit number one on Amazon.com and sorry, Amazon.com in the category of dark humor. So I
Wow.
was pretty happy about that, and I'm hoping for a similar return on Thievery and Grace.
Being a creative person, I think, obviously will help for authors because you already have tapped into something where music for you would be your creative outlet, and now it's just taking what you know musically and applying it to writing. For those people who don't have a creative outlet, starting seems very hard. Do you have any suggestions to an author who's listening to the show and they're trying to find their path to starting writing? Is there any kind of tips you'd share with them to get going?
Well, if the creativity is low and they want to write, I would say that nonfiction might be a good avenue
Mm,
because
right.
then it's less so much creativity, although there is a bit of the way you organize it. You have to have a bit of creativity there, but it's a lot about analyzing and collecting information and then putting that information down on the paper in your own words. So I would say if you're lacking the big imagination, where you're not having these stories and characters kind of flow through you, then but you want to write and you like sitting down and doing that craft, then I would say nonfiction is probably a good avenue to start. And then who knows where that might take you, but there's a big market for nonfiction. So I would say that's probably where you want to start. If you are creative and you just don't know how to get those characters and stories in your head out on paper, I would say the best thing to do is start reading. Read as much as you can. Read the classics, read what's going on now. Before you even start thinking about like marketing and which genre you're going to do, just read as much as you can. And things are going to jump out at you. You're going to like certain things, you're going to not like certain things. And if you compartmentalize the things you like, soon enough you're going to have a list, and you might even that list itself might tell you where you're supposed to be writing. If the things that jumped out at you came from sci-fi or young adult fantasy, and it's consistently on that basis you're finding that those are the things that are jumping out at you, then you might want to write those kind of
Right.
books. And
Yeah.
so, but you definitely have to put in your research. I don't think you're just going to jump in and start writing bestsellers right away. I think you have to check out the market and see what resonates with you, and put in a year of that, and I think you'll be in a lot better spot to start writing your own stuff.
Do you think somebody coming from hip hop or writing musical lyrics, a working their way into poetry, would be a natural transition into the writing world from music? You think that might
Oh
work?
yeah, 100%, 100%. I mean, I believe that hip hop in itself is poetry. It is poetry.
Yeah.
But it's spoken word to a tempo,
Yeah.
and there's a rhythm to it. So it's spoken word with musical accompaniment, and kind of you're dancing with that.
Yeah.
So I would say that they are one and the same, but poetry. I was talking about the different setups with prose. How prose is more it's more like show don't tell type of thing.
Yeah.
And I think going from writing hip hop lyrics to poetry has a lot of show in it, where the words, the lines can sometimes be a little abstract, but the vision that they produce in your head is very much like writing prose, where certain words produce a vision. Like, when you say like his throat was scratching, like a cat, like a hungry cat at a door.
Hmm.
Um,
Oh yeah.
that's you're saying he's thirsty, um, but you've provided an image that is explaining that, and I think that's what poetry does very well. Is it does the show where as hip hop that you just say like I'm the greatest,
Yeah.
and like, but you rhyme it with something like and all the haters hate this.
Yeah.
Uh, you're telling, you're telling, and there is show in hip hop, but I think hip hop is a lot more telling than show, and poetry is a lot more show than tell.
Interesting. And there's a whole theater of the mind as a reader. I like the idea that not every book is a movie, right? Not every song is a music video, right?
Mm-hmm.
The lyrics stand for themselves, and you don't always have to give context of video to give you the idea of what the author's trying to say in the book. The book stands alone. Like, that's the idea, that you can fall in love with it, get inside the story. You don't need a visual video to keep you on track. Your words and your connection from the reader to the author reading a book,
Mm-hmm.
that's enough. That's enough. You don't need the visual, right?
Well, I think that's what good writing is the good writing produces that video inside your
Right.
head,
Right.
and that cultivates imagination. And I
Yeah.
think imagination is very important because imagination leads to invention, leads to self discovery. It's a very important skill to have.
So you have two books. Let's
Mhm.
start with the first one. Let's talk about that. And then the new book is just coming out, which is exciting. Let's start with the first one. I want to introduce people to you as an author and the fact that you
Okay.
have more than one book then to pick from, which is awesome. I know
Mhm.
the readers that listen to the show, when they find a great new author, they want to get everything. I just want to get all the books. So
I
let's
hope
talk about
so.
the first one. Yeah, let's talk about the first one. When did it come out? And kind of give us the big idea of the book.
So the Wedding Bandits came out last year, so I guess that was 2024,
Good.
but it was written in 2020. And the reason for the lag there is because originally I was shopping it to literary agents, and I had gotten a bite from a literary agent, and they took it, but they were very long in getting back to me. It took about just over a year to get back to me.
Hmm.
And in that year, I had written more books because I was waiting, because it's industry kind of standard where you're not supposed to submit to other literary agents while another is looking at your work.
Yeah.
So I waited. Unfortunately, they ended up rejecting it, and I decided to go with self-publishing. So I put it out. It took a lot of. I actually ended up rewriting it a few times because when I got rejected, it was kind of a sign that the writing needs maybe a second look. You need to see what you can improve. So I did that, and I ended up with a product that I was really proud of. And I really wanted to see what I could do marketing wise, what I could do myself. So I put the cover together. I hired a cover designer, and I did all the marketing and advertising myself. Some of it was podcasts like your show here.
Yes.
A lot of it was advertising on Amazon, which that was probably the most profitable for me. Um, and so the book's called Wedding Bandits, and it's about a team. It's a crime novel, and it's about a team of con artists who marry rich, lonely women, and they take off with all the wedding gifts on the wedding night.
Oh,
And they go town to town, and they've been doing this for a while
wow.
until they rob the wrong bride, whose father happens to be an underground crime kingpin. And so, because they broke his daughter's heart, he is now bent on revenge. And so, he's chasing them through borders, through towns, while they are setting up and trying to con their next mark. So, it's a real cat and mouse tale. It's got a lot of humor in it, but a lot of action as well. And I really tried to write for a male audience, and not to say that it can't be enjoyed by all sorts of folks, but I really wanted to write for a male audience because as a reader, I'm finding that in contemporary literature, there is less and less of a market that's dedicated towards men.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that, we live in a democratic capitalist society and supply and demand is a big thing. So there's a lot more women readers, then there's going to be a lot more books for women. That makes sense. But I just feel that there might be more male readers if there were more books that were made for them. And so that's what I tried to do with Wedding Bandits. It ended up, like I said, it ended up hitting the bestseller on Amazon.com in the category of dark humor. But there were, when I use Book Sirens, it's a advanced reader copy website where you can send out free copies to readers who are interested. And so I did have a few negative reviews from women readers from that book because of the content, which, these guys are robbing rich, lonely women. And if you're a rich, lonely woman, maybe there's a physical aspect or a personality aspect that isn't very attractive. And I would liberally mention some of these things. And I think that maybe hurt some feelings or was triggering to some readers. And so I did get some negative reviews on that. But in this book, Thievery and Grace, I do the opposite. I'm really kind of going at men a bit for different presumed inadequacies, such as, a small penis. In the book, I like to call it a diminutive appendage, being a little bit more politically correct. But I noticed something that was very interesting, and that in the first book, when I was kind of going at the woman insecurities, I got some negative comments from women, but the guys who reviewed it really enjoyed it. They thought it was really funny. And yes, so they really enjoyed it. And then this time around, where I'm kind of making fun of men and the male insecurities, I had the same reviewer that was really into Wedding Bandits say that Thievery and Grace was just, it was too far below the belt. You shouldn't be talking about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it was really eye-opening in the fact that people really like to read stuff that aligns with their kind of prejudices or their kind of viewpoints. So that was kind of a learning experience for me.
Interesting. That's it's funny because the first book is written again to a specific audience, and the audience it's not written for was the ones that were vocal and gave you a negative response, right? It's like, well, the book wasn't written technically for you, and that's maybe why you're not connecting with it. It's written for this group over here. So that's interesting. You did focus on your audience, so I like that.
I think I'm really bad at choosing my audiences, because it's funny that you say that, because Thievery and Grace was written, I wanted to write from like men 16 to 24 who would kind of enjoy this juvenile humor. But it turns out that, like I said, some of the guys were not too into it, but the females left some really good reviews. The kind of the same demographic that may have not liked Wedding Bandits said, this is really intelligent, it's funny. So again, it seems that when I'm making fun of men, it's more enjoyed by women, and then when I'm making fun of women, it's more enjoyed by men. And so I don't know, make your own conclusions about what that says about us as a people, but it's definitely something you can quantify and see.
When you have time, when you're not writing or dropping sick beats in the background, what do you love to read? Like who do you go to for enjoyment, entertainment, as a reader?
Yeah, right on. Like I said, when I was really researching, I was reading everyone that I could. But I'd say my favorite author right now is Jack London. And he's written some books called Into the Wild, which is a book about a dog going from being domesticated into nature, and it's a fantastic book. I'm reading a book right now called John Barleycorn, and it's about a kid's relationship with alcohol throughout his entire life. Again, Jack London. He's written a book called The Road, which is about him traveling the tracks, hopping trains and stuff like that. and just it's a I he's yeah hands down my favorite author. His prose are very intelligent, very well written, and the content of his books, again, as a man, I feel very relatable about a man going out into the world, whether it's in the form of a dog character or a vagabond riding the tracks, or in like John Barleycorn. This kid, he has different jobs, and it's kind of like how alcohol fits into all these different excuse me phases of his life. But it really talks about the coming of age of a boy to a man, and I really enjoy and respect that. I could see more of that in modern literature. Also, I like Michael Crichton.
Okay. Yep.
For so long I called him Michael Crichton because
Yeah.
there's a C and an H in his name, and I didn't know how to pronounce it. But he writes sci-fi thrillers, and they're easy to grasp. It's not too complicated. Well, some of them are more like Jurassic Park is actually, if you read the novel, it's actually a very complicated novel. He's the writer of Jurassic Park, but he does have some that are more accessible. But what I love about him is that he writes thrillers, but he also puts in like bits of education in them, like facts. So it's almost like a bit of a nonfiction book too. And by the time you've read it, you feel smarter. Like you feel like you've been hanging out with a professor and he's dropped some knowledge on you. So I really like his books. It's really too bad that he died. He died a bit early from cancer, and that's too bad because he was an amazing talent. But I'm not too much into like the famous classical guys. Like a lot of people go crazy when I say this, but I really don't like Hemingway. I think Hemingway is extremely simplistic, and he talks about just like getting drunk a lot. It's just like guys getting drunk. I feel like there's no really like story that pulls you in for his stuff.
Right.
And there's a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
like a lot of big authors I don't really like. Charles Bukowski, everyone says, oh, he's so great. I don't find that he is that great of an author. I don't want to step on any toes. You know, he did have a lot of success, so I can't really hate on that.
Yeah.
But I like, yeah, I like to find authors that I like personally. Another author I really like is R.L. Stevenson. He wrote Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
he's written a lot of great books. I really like Victorian literature as well. I find the Victorian language is very beautiful. It's very elegant to read. And with my books, I've tried to incorporate that with making the prose, adjacent to Victorian prose, but keeping the dialogue modern and yeah. So but Jack London is definitely my guy. Also, there's a book. I'm not too familiar with the author himself, but there's a book called Cabbage Town, and I think the author's name is Hugh Garner, and it's an amazing book. It's about Toronto during the Depression, and there's a few different stories that kind of cross over about people's lives and how they were affected and how they dealt with their poverty. And it was just being from Toronto, being a Canadian. There's a lot of rich Canadian and his history in there that I don't think a lot of people would know off the bat. It's not the popular history. So I think that's a very interesting read, especially if you're a Canadian. I think you should check that out.
Awesome. Another Canadian author to recommend. I like that. Being both Canadians, I think we should do more of that. You talked earlier about the fact that there's not as many books geared towards men currently. And when we chatted earlier, you brought out some stats for me that really made me think. And I wanted to kind of get into this a little bit. You were kind of mentioning something along the lines, I'll get you to fill in the blanks from here, that when there are more books geared towards women as readers, women tend to be more active readers than men. General statements here. But women then also tend to be women that read often tend to be more educated, going to university and colleges and going after these big things in life where men seem to be not as on the same level, par to women in that. So
Mhm.
raising up men and the desire for men to read and be more active readers is something that you're on a mission to do through your books. But why, like, can you fill in the gaps of what I'm missing from that? But
Sure.
why
Yeah, yeah,
why is it
yeah.
so important to get more men into reading?
So I noticed when I was doing research that there is a stark parallel between the amount of respective gender authors and the amount of post-secondary degrees being awarded to those genders.
Right.
And so I'll just start from the beginning here. In the 1950s, noir and pulp was very popular with men, and detective novels. And they were primarily the sex that was running the publishing industry. And during that time, the percentage of bachelor's degrees between the sexes was 76.1% in the favor of men.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there were a lot of other things going on at that time. The people were coming from the war. There was the baby boom. There's other things to think about there. But then in the 1970s, after the invention of the birth control pill, there was a 20% increase in female authorship. Okay. And so as the female authors started to increase, so did the bachelor's degrees awarded to females. And by 1980, the amount of bachelor's degrees awarded to the sexes was split down the middle. Now, women authors continue to grow, male authors continue to decline.
Mm-hmm.
And 40 years later, from 1980 and 2020, women authorship finally surpassed male authorship. And what you see now is women are only earning 58% of bachelor's and 61% of master's degrees. So you can't say that correlation is causation, but you can say that there's a very interesting parallel between the
Yeah,
amount of authors of a certain sex and the degrees awarded to them post-secondary, the academic achievements. And so when I'm saying that more books need to be made for men, it's not just for entertainment. It's the fact that this may have a very serious effect on society, that there are less and less men being educated because less and less men are reading.
that's interesting. And I would say, even reflective of my own podcast, I would say the vast majority of my guests are female, writing to a more female audience,
Mm-hmm.
and less men on the show writing specifically to a male audience. So
Yeah.
my show is a representation of what you're talking about. And I do want to encourage men listening to this going, well, there's too many authors in the world. Who would ever want to read my stuff? Well,
Mm-hmm.
as a male author writing to a male audience, there might be a gap here where you could really do well, like you're doing, Oswald, with your books. There's a door open to you as an author, as from a male perspective, that maybe we need you as an author. So don't think it's overdone and there's no room for you. There might be a perfect spot for you to come in and be a male author writing to the male audience.
I definitely would agree. I would say, it's unfortunate, but in the last little bit, kind of the male instinct, masculinity has gotten a bit of a bad rap.
Right.
And I think because of that, commercially, things dedicated to men have been kind of put on the back burner.
True.
But I would advise, men, we need each other, and you should write for men. And the more you write for men, the more interesting stories will come out that may catch the eye, which may get more men to read, and it'll be a cycle, right? It'll be a cycle that we need. We need more men to read, but you can't just lecture men into reading. We have to give them stuff that they want to read. And in the 1950s, when the noir and the pulp was going on, you could look at it now and say, oh, well, some of it was a bit, um, they would call it maybe toxic masculinity, or like the femme fatales were like these busty blonde girls. It was kind of
Yeah.
objectifying women.
Right.
But, you have to get people in the door. And it's not as if right now with the books for women that they're doing anything different. There's all kinds of books with reverse harem, which is like two guys fighting over a woman. They're very popular. In fact, a lot of books that are very heavily drawn to the sex side for women
Hmm.
are bestsellers, and they're bestsellers in categories of things that really shouldn't have to do with sex, like not even romance categories, but like in crime. If you look at like the bestsellers on Amazon,
Right.
you'll find these books like the steamy, sexy with the ripped guy on the cover, which
Yeah.
are basically just the woman version of what was happening in the 1950s with pulp.
You're right.
And they're like in the top 10 bestsellers because when we can we can try to I don't know what the word for it is, but some we have to give in to some of our desires, right? And like I said about Michael Crichton, he writes these interesting thrillers, but then he throws in some educational stuff in there
Yeah.
too. So if you're writing books that maybe get men into the door because of it's an enticing kind of juvenile or sexy topic, but your prose, you're teaching them language, you're teaching, you're giving them, good information, you're throwing bits of education in there, then I think it's worth it. Because and the reason that we have to kind of start small and then work on to the bigger things. And I have a good analogy here that might put it into perspective. When I was in high school, we used to package food for third world countries for starving kids.
Hmm.
And there was a lot of candy going out. And I would ask the person in charge, why are you sending these people candy? It doesn't make sense. Wouldn't you want to send them like healthy food? And what he told me was after a certain time without sustenance, these people, these starving people, their body rejects the whole foods. So what the candy does is the sugar coats their stomach, which kickstarts their metabolism, which eventually allows them to ingest these whole foods, which are more nutritious for their
Hmm.
body. And so I believe that that is what we need to do with men to kickstart the metabolism of their minds. You need to give them something that is like sugar. It's not the best for you, but it's fun to take in. It's very easily digestible. And then once you start going, you start getting to the habit of reading, then you can start putting in these things that expand intelligence, expand perspectives on history and politics and all kinds of things. But to get them to start reading, and this is what I'm trying to do with Thievery and Grace, it's a little bit of a juvenile story. I think bawdy might be the word, or raunchy might be the word, but get them in with something that's very enjoyable. You don't have to think too much about it. And then once they get into the habit of reading, they can branch off and start building their minds and growing their minds.
I love it. And I'm on your website too, oswaldblack.com. So you'll see all the links there for the books and everything as well. So the new book, Thievery and Grace, an absurd heist comedy, this comes out like right now, like at the time of recording. It's coming out soon.
Yeah,
What are
it's
you excited about this book? Why are you so excited about this book?
well. First, it's like I said, it's a story that is it's very unique, and what the plot is about a team of con artists who are trying to lure a $1 billion pharmaceutical plant into a sexual harassment lawsuit. And they're doing this by kind of baiting them with a video of a small penis that they're hoping this guy with a small penis is going to be terrorized so much that they're going to be able to initiate a sexual harassment lawsuit. And the reason they're doing it with a man is because HRs around the country, they have so many things implemented to stop female harassment, but no one's really concerned about male sexual harassment. So it's a way
Hmm.
for them to kind of sneak in the back door and kind of blindside the system. And through it all, kind of it's funny, but there's also poignant moments and also like just a very thrilling crime novel, kind of like an Ocean's 11, but with a very comedic aspect of it. So I'm excited to show this to the world because I want to I want to kickstart a bit of the reader's funny bone of saying, we've been kind of suppressed for so long about being able to joke about certain things. and I want to be the first to say, like, hey, like, if it's in good fun, it's okay. And I'm gonna even, in good faith, I'm gonna make fun of my sex. I'm gonna make fun of my people, so that you can see that, if we can poke fun at ourselves, we don't have to be constantly on edge and looking for things to be offended about. And we can start to find humor. And in that humor, we can start to relate to each other more. Because right now, I think there's a lot of segregation and hostility. And I would like, through my authorship, my books, I would like to, conquer that a bit. I would like to turn
Yeah.
it in, to start get get the conversation going again, and doing that through humor.
I want to jump back to Wedding Bandits as well. You said that you submitted it and you're waiting for them to take you on and to help you with the whole journey of getting this published, but then it was not accepted. But instead of giving up and just like, well, I guess I'm not an author, I'm going to quit, you took it, you did some adjustments, and then it
Hmm.
became a bestseller. So
Yeah,
on them, they missed out on an opportunity to have a best-selling author part of their stable of authors. So good on you that you didn't
thank
take that
you.
as a negative response and that you're a terrible author, so you should never write again.
Well,
You took it,
I would
you worked on it, right?
thank you, and I think that's like, rejection is not a bad thing.
Yeah,
Rejection makes you take an honest look at yourself and see, are they right or are they wrong. Sometimes they're not right about everything, but sometimes they
right.
are right about some certain things. So, your critic is actually your ally. In the initial phase of it, when you first, it stings a bit, hurts the
Yeah,
ego a bit, because you want to believe that, like, you worked hard on something, it's amazing. But you have to understand that these people also read books for a living. So if they're saying that
yeah,
this is not ready, or it needs some work, or it's not there, then there's probably something to that. So you have to not take everything, especially as an artist. As an artist, you get told no, you get rejected. As an actor, as a musician, everything. You're there's way more no's than there are yeses. So
hmm,
you have to. It's all about how you react to the rejection. You have to see it as a constructive process,
yeah.
where rejection will now make you better. I think there's a phrase called, you get bitter or you get better, and
Hmm.
you have to choose to get better.
Well, when you grab the mic and get up on stage and doing all your hip hop stuff, for me as a musician too, getting on stage, punk, everything. If people start getting up and leaving the venue because you're up on stage, you're like, well, that's feedback. Maybe
one
I could be better, right? There's a reason they're leaving, but
Hundred percent.
you want people to stay, you want people to be engaged, so you get immediate feedback when you do anything live like
Yeah,
that. For an
and it's just
author, right, it's a little different.
yeah, and just repetition too. Like when we're talking about the hip hop stuff, when I first started, I was very intense. I would put the microphone right to my lips, and I was like, kind of screaming into it. So it was very distorted. It was not
Yeah,
very pleasing to the ear. And by the end of my run, I knew the exact spot and volume that I needed to
right.
rhyme, so that it came out nice out of the PAs.
Yeah,
But this is all through repetition and failure. You have to
yeah,
fail over and over again, and each time pick yourself up, do it again, do it again, do it again. And with books, it maybe takes a bit longer, because it takes you, what, maybe like a year to write a book,
yeah.
and then you have about a year or half a year of seeing what it does and seeing what people have to say about it. So yeah, the process does come a little slower, but that's why you have to always be writing, always be reading, always be writing, and that's how you're going to get to the level where people now accept you and say, this guy's a good writer, this guy knows what he's doing. It doesn't just happen overnight.
Again, going back to your website, oswaldblack.com, I'm seeing I get a tab for reviews. I've been reading the reviews and very interesting comments on the
Mm-hmm.
book. It's nice when people give feedback to the author. I always tell the listeners of this show that the author writes the book, puts their words on paper, and gives it to us. We read it. Our opportunity is to give our words back to the author, because authors love to read your thoughts about their work. So
Mm-hmm.
anytime you buy a book, always leave a review, because the authors love to read those things.
Yeah.
But you have them on your website. So I love that you have that there. The books are there. A lot of information, contact information as well. Beyond your website, Oswald, where are you most active? Where people can interact with you? They want to, chat with you, or be in your world. Where do you live online?
Well, you can sign up for the newsletter right there on my website,
Yep.
and I do send out periodic emails there with sometimes like a free short story, or I'll have links to my audiobooks. I try to record audiobooks myself for my books, but I try to stay off a lot of social media
Yeah.
because I don't I don't really enjoy it too much, but I am on Instagram. So if you are on social media, and I just kind of post a lot when I do this thing when I'm doing first drafts. I'll post excerpts from that first draft, so you kind of know what's coming in the future,
Yeah.
and so you'll be like, oh, I really like the story. Well, like in 3 years it'll be out. And then I just have like so I'll be showing them a first draft while I'm releasing my next book. So there's this constant flow of what's coming out, what's coming up soon.
Yeah.
So if you're on Instagram, you can find me at Oswald Black Books. And yeah, I post there pretty much. I try to post once a week.
Yep. And I see you have YouTube videos as well on your website.
Oh yeah, I do have YouTube videos. Sorry, I forgot about that. Actually, if you are a writer and you're looking for like advice and stuff, I
Yeah.
kind of do real time explanations about what I'm going through. So when I was doing my marketing plan for my first book, I recounted every avenue I took, what worked for me, what didn't, and it's all super honest. I'm not trying to sell you anything. It's just me as an author saying what works, what doesn't, what I'm struggling with. Um, so it's a very honest view of the period between being a nobody and being successful. All that meaty stuff is what I'm trying to post on my YouTube,
Okay.
plus audiobooks as well.
Good. And we'll have a link in the YouTube version of this podcast to your YouTube channel, so people can
Oh,
go right there.
that is fantastic. Thank you.
Awesome. Let's wrap up, Oswald. Any last thoughts for your readers? We've talked to the authors a lot today, and I'm so glad we did. To your readers, if you were to be able to sit down at a coffee shop, the two of you as the author and the readers with you, what is your love letter to a reader? What do you want them to know about you as an author? What are they going to get when they buy your books? Kind of what's your message to that reader? What do you want to say to them?
Hmm. It depends whether that reader is they're happy or they're not very happy.
Happy. Let's go
uh,
happy, happy, happy. Yeah.
if you're happy, I would say you know you're gonna get consistent quality books from me. The plots are probably gonna be a little out there, but you're gonna laugh. There's gonna be poignant moments. I like it's kind of cliche, but I laughed, I cried. That's what I want to go for. I want a person to have a real emotional experience when they read my book. It's not just a whodunit or the twist at the end. Through the whole book, I want to take you on ups and downs of emotional, of what's around the corner, suspense. Um, I really want you to be immersed in that book, and I do that with, quality prose, relatable, in-depth characters that are fleshed out and personable, and always surprises, always like where you didn't see that coming. Um, so yeah, and for the people who show up there and they're not happy, I would say just give me a chance. Just give me a
Hmm.
chance. Read the book and measure it not on what your preconceived notions are about certain
Right.
topics, but just read the book for what it is and see how I handled it, and then see if it's disrespectful or rude. Because I truly believe it's done in a very respectful way. Even if I touch on taboo topics, it's done in a very respectful way that in the end, the message is one of coming together and in unity. So I would say, don't judge the book by its cover, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really take it in, and then if you hate me after that, fair enough. I'm I'm not going to blame you for it.
I love it. Oswald, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for
Thank you
being
for
on the
having me. I had a
podcast.
great time.
Love having Canadian authors on. Congratulations on the new launch of the new book,
Thank
and
you.
encouraging everyone to go buy a copy of both books. Get them. Leave great reviews, as we talked about already, for the readers. I know Oswald would love to hear your thoughts.
Love it.
And let people know why you love the book as well, because other people are going to read those reviews and make a decision to purchase based on your review as a reader.
Reviews do help. They do help.
Please do that, right?
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Oswald. Thank all the information for everybody in the show notes. As always, go check out our amazing authors and support them with your money and your love. Oswald, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Hey, as we exit the podcast, as we leave out the door, I know the car's running. Somebody's eagerly waiting for you to get out there and go home. As we exit the podcast, I just want to ask, if you have time, I would truly appreciate it. We ask for you to do this for our authors. When you buy your book, we ask you to leave a review. Why? Because it means a lot to the author and it tells other people that the book is great. Now, you don't hear me ask for this very often, so I'm going to do this here because we're friends, right? You and I are friends. I would love a review of this show because it'll tell more people to come and listen to this podcast. So if you have Apple, wherever you're listening, there's probably some way to give a star rating or leave a comment about the show. YouTube, you can always leave comments on YouTube. Every episode's there. I'd love to hear from you. Leave a review, leave a rating, and share this with somebody. That's probably the best way to grow the podcast, is for you to share it. And by listening to the end of the episode, like you're doing right now, tells all the apps this is a good podcast. So thank you for already helping me by listening to this part. But go leave a review. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And thank you for being part of the podcast family. Take care.